You're listening to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast covering the wild world of college football. On tap for today are hot takes, controversy, and analysis on your favorite team. Here's your host, Hampton Sipper, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back in to the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I've got joining me tonight the Reddit extraordinaire himself, Mr. Chase Haney, back from his 2-week hiatus. And I've got the correspondent at large, Graham Haney, joining me tonight to talk a little college football week 4 in review. Fellas, what a jam-packed weekend we had. And Chase, since you've kind of been gone the past couple weeks, why don't you let the viewers know kind of where you've been and get started guiding us through this conversation tonight.
Yeah. Let's do it. Hey, glad to be back, first and foremost. Hey, cool kind of moment. These guys said that we'll probably switch to recording on Monday nights, which is going to most likely be true until at least the end of the season. My wife and I meet with a community group, and we're both in ministry. So long story short, just had some dates switch around, and these guys are gracious enough, flexible enough to let's record on Monday, which I think for the viewer, the listener, if you're listening to this, I think it's going to actually benefit you the most of that. We might be able to do 2 episodes, releasing one on Tuesday and then one on Thursday, just being a little bit more ahead of the game so that you can listen to it throughout the week. But hey, we're grateful that you listen wherever you are, whether you're in the shower, on the way to work. Grateful. But before I get started, fellas, do either one of you know what a Murphy bed is? Graham, you might know because I've sent you pictures. Hampton, do you know what a Murphy bed is?
I know you sent me a picture of it.
Yeah, so a Murphy bed
house, yeah,
might be top 3 heaviest pieces of furniture you could ever put in your house. There was one in this room, and Lindsay and I I was having to take apart the Murphy bed. It was so heavy, and we would carry it in pieces. And if you don't know what a Murphy bed is, it's a bed that it kind of looks like almost like a cabinet, like a set of cabinets that, is a furniture piece that you move in, and it can fold down. And it's great, but anyways, we're having some work done, needed to remove it. Top 5, probably top 3 heaviest pieces of furniture anywhere in your household. Never get one, and if you do, make sure you're not the person who has to move it out. So, word to the wise, fellas, let's jump right into it. Hey, we've got several games to cover, and let's start with the one that had you probably on the edge of your seat. Well, there's 2 of them, but let's start with the one that might have had you on the edge of your seat the latest at night. How about that distinction? Which is the Notre Dame Ohio State game. Hampton, before you dive into this, I want you to just kind of set the scene a little bit and tell us how much this game meant going in.
It had everything you'd want as a college football fan. It had 2 storied programs at an incredible venue in South Bend, Indiana, and it had 2 teams that have college football championship aspirations. I mean, these 2 teams are national championship contenders, and whoever won was going to use this as a springboard throughout the rest of the year. It kind of builds in a little bit of a margin for error, and the loser, while not completely out of the picture by no means, if you lose one more, you're out. You're done. You're probably done. A 2-loss team has never gotten into the college football playoff. Now, that may change this year, especially with the amount of parity that we're seeing and the lack of an elite team. But that was kind of the stage going in. 2 top 10 programs both this year, but also historically, arguably top 5 with Notre Dame and Ohio State. And both Graham and I picked Notre Dame to win this game. And what's sad is they should have won this game, fellas. This was such an interesting game to kind of not only to watch, but to really examine, because I felt like Notre Dame kind of didn't completely dominate the game, but they had a stranglehold on this game for the majority of it. And their first 2 drives, they go right down the field. They're able to be physical with Ohio State, run the ball. Sam Hartman's being efficient, and they get down on the first drive. They turn it over on downs. They go for it on 4th and 1 on the Ohio State 19 or 20-yard line. They don't get it. Then next drive, go downfield again. and I think they missed a field goal. So that was 2 drives right there where you could have put points on the board. And against a team like Ohio State, you have to take advantage of every opportunity that is presented to you. Then they kind of went through a little bit of a lull, but then at the kind of the later end of the third into the fourth, Notre Dame had a huge drive, 93, 96-yard drive. Sam Hartman is finally pushing the ball downfield, which is something that I was surprised that Notre Dame didn't do more of. I felt like they were very conservative, and it looked like your mom and dad's Notre Dame of the past 10 to 15 years, where it's an offense that wants to run the ball, and if they have a passing game, it's going to be short and intermediate. And with Sam Hartman, who has been kind of chucking the ball all over the field this year, you thought that that was going to be a decided advantage for them going in. And they really didn't take advantage of that during the game until that drive. They got a few big chunk plays, and they go up 17-14 on Ohio State. And as a Notre Dame fan, you got to be feeling really good about yourself. Then Ohio State moves the ball. They get stuffed on 4th and 1. And at that point, which was a gosh-awful play call, may I say, doing a jet sweep to the short side of the field. But they get stopped. Notre Dame gets the ball back. All they have to do is kill clock. And, I think they got a couple first downs. They're running right at Ohio State. And then inexplicably, they run like this, it seemed like an exotic like option type mesh play. I don't know what was going on. It was not a traditional handoff. Sam Hartman keeps it, loses 5 yards. And then from there, the doo-doo ran downhill for Notre Dame because they threw a screen pass that almost got intercepted by JT Tumalua. Hope I got that pronunciation right. Then on 3rd and 15, instead of throwing the ball, they just ran it, got 2 yards, and punted to Ohio State. And then this is where the real debacle happens, because Ohio State is moving the ball downfield, but they're also, it's very clunky, it's very disjointed, and Notre Dame's being very aggressive. They're blitzing, but then all of a sudden it's 3rd and 19 after an intentional grounding call, and they rush 3. Play a soft zone, and credit to Kyle McCord and Ime Ibuka, finds a soft spot in the zone, gets down on the 1-yard line, and then they run 2 plays. First play is incomplete. Second play, touchdown. Game over for the most part. But what's really bad about all of it, because Notre Dame had this game won, and it started with the offensive possession and the play calling on there. But then on defense, go into that soft zone, which I'm never for rushing 3 in those late game situations and just giving a team free yards. You don't play to lose or play not to lose. You play to win. But then what's even more indicting, on those final 3 plays, you have 10 players on the field.
Mm-hmm.
That is an abject disaster as a coach. And Marcus Freeman, I love the guy. I think he's a really bright head coach. And I think you saw that on Saturday against Ohio State, the way they competed in that game. But you can't have that. That is inexcusable in a moment of that magnitude. So while I feel like Notre Dame really controlled the game and did a lot to lose it, you got to give credit to Ohio State for taking advantage of those opportunities. But also, in years past, the offense has carried Ohio State. This year, their defense has really stepped up to the plate, and to hold Notre Dame to 17 points is really impressive. Sam Hartman was under 200 yards passing. That's a credit to how far that unit has come in the past couple years. And when their offense gets right, which I think it probably will, even though Kyle McCord was dying to throw a pick on that last drive. He about did, and the guy dropped it. When they get kind of up to speed with that defense, they're going to be a tough team to contend with. So really impressed with Ohio State responding to adversity. Disappointed in Notre Dame with the coaching disaster at the end. Sam Hartman, you're a 5 or 6 year player and you only throw for 200 yards, man. I need a little bit more from you. I know that drive to go up 14-10, they didn't go up 17-14. They went up 14-10, was very impressive, but I need more from you. And my last note before I kind of kick it to Graham, Ryan Day, I'm sorry, brother, but if you get 86-year-old Lou Holtz and that riles you up, him talking some junk about your team, brother, you need to re-examine your priorities. I mean, that was, to me, congratulations on the win. That was cringe, man, to go out an 86-year-old man who, I mean, with our country, he should run for president at this point. He fit right in. But what are we doing? Like, I felt like I was watching college football live at 10:30 at night back in the day with Mark May and Lou Holtz going back and forth in Reese's court. Just an embarrassing moment by Ryan Day. But credit to Ohio State, Notre Dame. Still, your season's ahead of you. You play Duke this week, which is going to be a very challenging game. How do you respond?
Yeah, I can agree to that. I think the storyline of this game, unfortunately, has turned away from the game and to what Ryan Day had to say. And it was like he took the attacks personal when it was exclusively meant okay, your coaching record is that whenever you play physical teams, you usually lose. And Ryan Day thought that he was Lou Holtz was challenging his manhood, and it was okay. I think everybody sat back and was like, I don't think that's really what anybody meant by that, but okay. Man, I got to catch a little bit of it. Just involved with a good friend of mine getting married, so I was involved in the wedding. But yeah, it was a good game. I mean, I was keeping up with the score just as time went by, and I think the testament of the game is the simple fact that neither team shot themselves in the foot throughout the entire game. It was we're gonna make sure that we make the best play possible. We're not going to try and take too many risks. We're going to give ourselves a chance to win in the fourth quarter, and that's what happened. It is kind of concerning that the last 2 or 3 plays, Notre Dame only had 10 guys on the field, especially after coming out of a timeout. That was the
point.
concerning factor. Wasn't the 10 men wasn't it obviously is a big deal, but to come out of a timeout like that was definitely did not look good. Credit to Ohio State going into a tough environment. I think that was their first sort of test of the year, and I think that Kyle McCord silenced some of the doubters. He did not play great, but I think that the expectation and just the word going on around him was that, man, he's not an elite quarterback. Ohio State's going to lose if he's not elite, and it was not that. I think that you saw that Ohio State has a good, solid football team all around, and whenever Kyle McCord makes plays, Ohio State will be very good. If Kyle McCord doesn't make many plays, Ohio State will still be good. If Kyle McCord makes bad plays, that's when you need to be concerned for Ohio State. Hampton, like you said, Sam Hartman's got to step up more, especially being a 5th-year, 6th-year guy coming into Indiana and Notre Dame, and trying to change the culture and solidify themselves as the top program in the country and compete for a national title and make the college football playoff and actually win one of those playoff games. I think that was I didn't see enough out of him, but for Notre Dame, they still kind of control their own destiny, and the fact that they still have a good schedule ahead where if they win out, I don't see how they could probably be kept out of the college football playoff unless there's obviously a crazy scenario where there's 5 undefeated teams and then Notre Dame will not get it. So, story of the game, I think, was both teams did a good job of not killing themselves, just putting drives together, and then just kind of limiting explosive plays from the opponent. I think that was the biggest play of the game was a 60-yard rush by Travion Henderson. So, I mean, nothing too explosive. 20 to 40 yards were the big plays. So, fun game to keep up with. Wish I could have watched the whole thing, but looking forward. Excited for what's going to happen.
I've only got one more note, and then Chase, I'll kick it back to you. I'm just happy that Lou Holtz did not consider or not criticize Ryan Day's beard dye job or his hair dye job. I mean, that would have been even more of a reaction. That's all I got. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, it was I think honestly, Graham, I think you probably resonate with this. There's probably a good amount of us who flipped it on once it had gotten started, and then you might have flipped around and then realized, wait, it's this game is so low scoring. You thought it was going to be a little more of a shootout.
Yep.
I think for me, just the story of the game, real quick, was just Notre Dame has, and you've mentioned a couple of those. Man, if we wouldn't have done that, we probably win this game.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like Ohio State was almost trying to lose, and Notre Dame just like kind of kept them in the ball game. And the moment that sticks out to me before we move on is that last drive. Ohio State quarterback throws almost right into the Notre Dame's defender's hands, and he drops it. And just moments even like that where it was like, man, the game was centimeters away from being over, and yet they still had life. And if you're Ohio State, sometimes it's better just to be lucky that guy doesn't catch the ball. It just felt like, man, it just feels like it's headed your direction. So,
Mm-hmm.
hey, well, let's move on. Let's actually do this. Let's cover two games at kind of a 10,000-foot view so we can get to the Alabama game. I want to ask you an interesting question, though. So the Colorado-Oregon game obviously got ugly and got ugly quick. There was one team that was obviously better than the other. And I don't know if you're a Colorado fan, you're probably trying to figure out, hey, where might we have even been better? And you're struggling. So let me ask you this. There's been a lot of reaction after this game. We weren't really surprised by the result, but let me ask you this. Graham, and I'll start with you. What of maybe the criticism, let's call it, of Dion coming out of this game? What do you think is warranted? Maybe one thing you think that's warranted, and then what's something that you feel like is not warranted? So maybe you could do this even backwards. Maybe start with the what's what's not warranted. Hey, it's too much blowback. But then what's maybe something that's like, hey, that's actually pretty true. So you go first, and toss over to Hampton.
Sure. Yeah, I think that from my perspective, I think the game line before it started was like Oregon was favored by 21 points or something like that.
Yeah.
So the game wasn't supposed to be close. Like I don't think anybody was surprised that Oregon won this game, in very convincing fashion. Travis Hunter not playing was also a big knock on Colorado because he's their best player. I think what I would say is probably warranted. The criticism that is warranted is the antics that went on pregame from Colorado's perspective of going in there and roughing up the field a little bit, scraping some feet on the Oregon logo at midfield. I think that is one of those things that it does happen, and I think that the reason why it was brought so much light was because Colorado's going to come in here and they're rubbing their feet on the the logo, and then Oregon's got to put it to them, and they did. I don't think that's why they did it, but they did. I think that what was unwarranted from Colorado's perspective is that in the simple fact of Dion and Coach Prime saying, we're coming, and then it's like the mood's changed the past few weeks, and it says, we're here. And Colorado's not there yet. I think that is the thing that has been misconstrued is that Colorado, although they are exceeding expectations, they don't have a good enough team to make the college football playoff. They do not have a good enough team to win the Pac-12. I mean, I think that is, from everybody's opinion, that is what is the truth. I think that what is unwarranted is the criticism of just of Colorado and the fact of, man, they got blown. They're awful. And it's like, I don't think that you can't speak one way and then the game happens and you speak another. I think that you have to know going in there, Colorado was outmanned, outgunned, outmatched. And after the game, what was the story? They were outmanned, outgunned. And I think that you could argue that they were out-schemed and maybe a little bit out-coached. I think from Colorado's perspective, having Travis Hunter not playing is more of a knock on what their ceiling could be than it is like of what their floor is. I think that there's so many unknown pieces on this Colorado team because truly it is Shador, Shiloh, and Travis Hunter. I think outside of that you have I'm not going to say average talent, but not spectacular or superb talent in the sense of, national recognition. But, credit to Oregon. They took care of business. Colorado is going to have to respond if they want their season to turn around. Whether they want to or not, they're going to be in the center of college football media.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want the storyline to be? Do you want the storyline to be, we weren't good enough this year, we're going to keep getting better, we're going to work harder, and then later down the season, there's going to be a game where we're underdogs by 14, 17 points, and then we upset again? I think that going on the road to Eugene was probably a good test for Colorado in the sense of you've gone into a tough environment, you made all the mistakes you could. Now respond in 2 weeks against USC, and let's see how you match up then. Hampton, I guess I'll throw the same two questions at you. What is some fair criticism of Colorado, and let's say some unfair criticism of how the game transpired?
Yeah, Chase, I thought that was a fantastic question by you. Great way to put it. I would say, hey, no big deal, right? What should have I expected, right? I butchered that.
It's an even better
totally,
compliment
but
whenever you stutter. You're like, man, I'm really going deep right here. Really got to. Good question.
Good question. I know. I totally butchered that. Sorry, audience. But I would say what was warranted is really what Graham said. I'll be pretty quick with this. Colorado coming in, doing that at midfield, even though I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, but you can't complain about, they're going on the Buffalo at your home stadium, but then you go in on their logo, their home stadium. Really doesn't fly for me. But what's totally unwarranted is, I mean, I saw a Sport Illustrated article that it was like Oregon stuns Colorado in what no one saw coming. And I'm like, nobody with a college football brain other than a casual college football fan that just started watching 3 weeks ago because of Coach Prime and because of Colorado thought that they had a shot in this game. Now, did Graham and I think it would be a little closer? Yeah, we did. But what I said, the biggest discrepancy that you would see in this game is in the trenches. And Oregon dominated them in the trenches. They did whatever they wanted because they just got different dudes up front. Colorado, in every game they play, even when they play TCU, even when they play Colorado State, you could tell that they are lacking. Coach Prime has even said that they are lacking up front. That's why he's like, I got to get them big boys in because that's how you win and you compete at the college level and really all levels of football. So I believe that whole reaction of, it's shocking Oregon blasted them. No, it's not. And then if you're leveling criticism at Deion because they got blown out, what Deion has done in 4 weeks, I mean, them being 3-1, no one thought they'd be 3-1 at this point. They won one game last year. Everything from now on is gravy for this season, especially with Travis Hunter, because not only is he your best offensive player, he's your best defensive player. So that kind of talk and some of the takes about Deion and how he brought it upon himself, and I know Dan Lanning kind of went at him that, they're playing for clicks, we're playing to win. Just because Deion is like boisterous and loud and he'll let you know what he thinks, like he hasn't gone at anybody who hadn't gone at him first.
Yeah.
I mean, he's there to win games, but he's also there. He's a magnetic personality. That is how he is how he was as a player. So complaining about that is just dumb to me, especially when after the game, the guy took questions for a solid 20 to 30 minutes and said, we got our butt kicked.
Yeah.
I mean, people are like, he's not humble. He said, we got our butt kicked, and it was, a good old-fashioned butt whooping. Gave credit to Oregon. I don't know what more you want from them, and I think people are just trying to throw stones at a glass house because they're threatened a little bit by Deion and threatened by what he's done in 4 weeks, and what he said was true. You better get him now, because I can guarantee you in the coming years, it ain't going to be as easy.
Yeah. And that was a great way to leave it for him say, hey, this worse than won't be. You better beat me now because you're not going to beat me in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I will give Dan Lanning a little bit of credit in saying if there was an opportunity to steal some shine, he did that.
Mission
And
accomplished.
I respect that. I honestly, and if they would have gone in there and only won by 3, we would have had a problem. But I can respect where he kind of ran his mouth a little bit, kind of, and maybe that was maybe a kind of a private moment that we got access to that I don't know if he loved is out, but maybe he wants out.
He knew the cameras were rolling, brother. He knew what he was doing.
Maybe that doesn't get released if you only win by 3. That's maybe what I'm trying to say.
No. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
I think he knows these players now, and he would say that they don't win on clicks, and he definitely is going to play that to some recruits that are
absolutely.
So we'll see if he's a man of his word on that. But hey, let me ask you. So we need to get to this Alabama game. So let me ask you a short question to just move us along. FSU travels to Clemson, South Carolina, and somebody put this in a really good perspective. Yes, Clemson loses to Duke week 1. Duke is not a bad football team this year. And I think that maybe some of us overreacted and said, hey, Clemson sucks. Plenty of reasons to be maybe a little hesitant. But Duke's not a bad football team. And I think time has proven that. But FSU, kind of goes into Boston College, and that's their kryptonite, it seems like, in the ACC. To not get beat by a powerhouse, but to get beat by Syracuse, Boston College, the powerhouses up north. But
Wait for us. Yeah.
Let me just ask you this: what is your, and you can swing either way, but I just need one to move us along. What was your one takeaway from the FSU Clemson game? One takeaway. Graham, do you mind if I start with you?
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, my one takeaway: in order for Florida State to compete for an ACC championship and a national championship, they've got to run the football better. They have to. Clemson was controlling the line of scrimmage, especially on the defensive side. That's what made it so close. I think that Florida State averaged like 1 yard a rush. Like it was awful. I think that Clemson, like we said, better than they have more talent than they're probably producing. But Florida State, they've got to clean it up, or somebody's going to actually get to them. I think that Jordan Travis made some big plays and was able to pull Florida State to a victory. But they've got to run the ball better to be two-dimensional, to keep star players on opposing defenses out of the backfield.
I'd agree with that, Graham. I think that's a great point. And Chase, another good question by you. No shock.
Appreciate it.
But to me, the biggest takeaway is another Florida State take. Their pass defense is suspect. And it was suspect against LSU for a good majority of that game. And to me, Clemson, whose offense was missing a couple key receivers, who has struggled this year, especially against Duke, to generate explosive plays in the offense and to stay ahead of the change with their passing game, they kind of took advantage of that Florida State secondary to an extent. And another thing that I noticed with Florida State, and it's kind of a past 2 weeks thing, they kind of, I know this is a weird thing to say, they were playing a little lethargic in a way. Like, to me, they didn't have the juice. Like, they didn't have the juice against Boston College, and they really didn't have it this week. Now, credit to them for fighting through adversity, making the necessary plays to win. But Graham talking about the running game and then their pass secondary, or their pass defense, I think those are two areas that are not, I wouldn't say like I'm pushing the panic button, but it's areas to monitor, kind of going forward. And then with Clemson, I'm glad I bet my paycheck that they weren't going to make the national championship, because they will not. Thank goodness. Thank you, Dabo. And we talked about some bad coaching this weekend. The coaching at the end of the fourth quarter and at the end of overtime, with calling bubble screen on 3rd and 1 when you could have easily just handed it to Will Shipley, got a first down, maybe kept it going. Pretty egregious. And then, like Notre Dame, they went 3-man rush, soft zone before the half. Florida State exploited it, or made it 17-14. Going into half, completely changed the complexion of the ball game. So those are a few things I took away from that game.
Cool. Yeah, I wish we could have dove into that one more, but we'll move right along. Let me transition by saying this, that I feel like this might be a little bit of an overreaction, but I'll say it. Where Clemson finds themselves now is where, if you're an Alabama fan and you feel like things are slipping before this week, you're thinking, man, next year we could be, or the year after that, we could be sitting where Clemson is sitting now. Just as you watch the end of that game, start at 11 o'clock, you're thinking, man, I sure hope we're not on the same trajectory, because it sure does feel that way. And yeah, it felt like there was kind of just this deficit of coaching. You could tell Dabo was visibly upset several moments. It just felt like, why does no one else see this like I see this?
And threw the coordinator under the bus.
Yeah.
At halftime.
I mean, just how kind of like man, how does no one else see this except for me? Why don't you guys see that this needs to be done? So just like visibly upset. And if you're an Alabama fan, you go into that Ole Miss game thinking, hey, if we lose this one, we might be right beside Clemson, or we're headed that way. And to everyone's pleasure in this room that's recording this podcast, things turned out well. But let's take our time to kind of take us through the emotions of the game, what you saw, because it didn't start that way. It's kind of what I'm going to let you guys fill in the color here. So, Hampton, I'm going to let you start. Game kicks off. Kind of take me through a macro level, 10,000-foot view of just how you felt throughout the game, and then maybe touch on a few key moments or few key takeaways from you.
Absolutely. Well, as everyone knows, and I got many a message, probably more messages after any podcast we've ever done, for me picking Ole Miss to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
Hold this man accountable.
And you got to hold me accountable. Hey, if you don't, who will, right? And the thing is, my main point was, on paper, Alabama should have won this game. They're a more talented team. They've got more 5-star, 4-star prospects than Ole Miss. But my whole thing was, you've got to show me. You've been talking about playing at the standard, playing a physical brand of ball, Joel the Smurder ball, coming back. But you haven't shown it this year. And in the first half, they didn't show it. It was abysmal. Now, half of it was abysmal. My defense, who I've been talking about all year as being an elite unit, showed out again. They only allowed one touchdown on the second drive of the game, made an adjustment, and they shut Ole Miss down as the lowest amount of points that Ole Miss has given up or has scored on offense since like 2000. So, incredible job by the defense in the first half. But offensively, I felt like there was a little bit more success than obviously the South Florida game, but it's still very disjointed. Still penalties at terrible times. Still Jalen Milroe holding on to the ball too long, not hitting your check down quick enough. Just missing reads, bailing in the pocket too early. Offensive line getting whooped a little bit in the run game. The interception that he threw in the red zone. Getting a punt blocked on the 1-yard line. Going from shotgun and having it go over your head and getting only 3 points on the drive. I mean, it was rough. It was rough. But the second half, you saw a little bit of a glimpse of what this team could be. And what was exciting was the defense continued to play to that high level. I mean, they sacked Dart, I think, 5 times. They had like 9 tackles for loss. Dallas Turner was an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Braswell had a great game. Tim Keenan, the interior D lineman, hey, that brother's coming on. Not only he's been a good run stopper, he generated a lot of interior pressure this past weekend. I thought Jaheim Otis looked good. Damon Payne, I thought, played a really good game along that front. Tim Smith. And while the front played really good, I thought the back end was phenomenal. Terrion Arnold, maybe his best game in a Crimson Tide uniform.
Yeah.
Had an interception, had a couple passes defended. He's a really physical tackler, too, for the most part on the outside. Linebackers played well. And, I mean, again, you held Ole Miss to 10 points. and made life really difficult on them. I mean, they could never get their running game going. And, I mean, at the end of the game, I thought we were about to have a Zach Mettenberger 2013 moment. I mean, Jackson Dart, Kevin Steele sends the double safety blitz. Malachi Moore gets home. Jackson Dart looks like he might have to crawl off the field. And I know it's harsh, but man, as a guy that loves defense, that got me fired up, man. I mean, I don't want Jackson Dart to be like hurt, but see him, his jersey dirty and
Brother's got to
see
learn
him
how
have
to
a couple
snap the helmet.
bruises.
Got to learn how to snap the helmet. That's what he's got to learn how to do.
That's what I'm saying, because Jahan Campbell about sent that man to the stratosphere.
Dude, some of those hits, though, it's like, hey, man, you're wearing a helmet to protect your head. And if you're not going to lace this thing up real tight, you might as well not wear it. But, I mean, it was making some pop so real bad. And I think Saban told the official at one point, like, hey, it's not targeting because, they weren't calling it, but it was like, hey, just to be clear, this guy's not snapping his helmet on, and it's going to continue to pop off. Now, don't get trigger happy with those flags just because this guy won't snap his helmet on. But, yeah, I mean, go ahead, Hampton. I didn't mean to cut you off, but, yeah.
No, you're good. Well, and for him, if he's going to make it through the whole year, he cannot keep taking hits like he took this past Saturday in Tuscaloosa. But defense, I thought, did a phenomenal job. Kevin Steele, the Steel Curtain, coming through for me once again. But the real interesting part of this game, I wasn't shocked about what the defense did, not one bit. But offensively, I felt like they found a little bit of a rhythm in the second half. Was it still a little disjointed? Was it still sometimes not pretty? Absolutely. But they ran the ball more effectively. Jason McClellan went over 100 yards. And Jalen Milroe hit a couple deep balls, showed some toughness. I mean, that throw that he made to Jalen Hale while getting blasted, it's an impressive throw. Now, the one to Jermaine Burton, great catch by Burton. That was not a good throw. That was not a good throw. He launched it and made him go over the wrong shoulder. Was a little late on the throw. But I feel like Tommy Rees maybe did his best job this game of kind of recognizing we need a little bit more QB run game, a little more 12 personnel so that we can run the ball more effectively and then play off that. And I felt like the offensive line manned up a little bit in that second half. And, I still think that Alabama's going to finish 8-4 and they're going to go to the Shreveport Bowl. And, it's going to be a disappointing year. I said that for some friends of mine's sake. I don't truly believe that. We had a fun little experiment this week that we did a role reversal, that I was the negative Nancy and they were the positive Alabama fans, and it seemed to work out. So maybe we should keep that going for the rest of the year. But I will say it'll be interesting, and we'll talk about this for our next pod briefly, but can Alabama put together quarters 3 and 4 for a whole 4 quarters in Starkville? Because I think if Milroe continues to improve, and I do think he showed improvement, especially staying in the pocket, maybe hitting the check down a little bit quicker than he did in the first half. And then if you can execute on those deep balls and lean on that running game, you got the defense going to keep you in games. I mean, they've already shown that. I think Alabama can round into form as the season goes on. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to take some time. But this is how they got to win for right now. Lean on the defense, run the ball, and limit mistakes. So overall, impressive performance by them. I'm still pretty high on Ole Miss. I think they're a good team. They got a big test this upcoming weekend, which we'll talk about in our next show. But big win for the Tide, because if you lose this one, it might have spiraled out of control for this year. So big win. Now you head to Starkville, where you haven't played well on the road past 2 years. I'm going to be interested to see how they respond after a big win going to Starkville and having to deal with the Cowbells.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my response short and sweet. I think that this game, like Kevin and I talked about in the last pod, was not going to be a statement game for Alabama's program, the football season just in general. But I do think this game will serve as a marker for looking forward, in the sense of this is what's going to change the Tide. And looking back, it's going to be a game that, yes, we should have handled it the way we did, But this is when things got moving and things got rolling. So not a statement win because Alabama was supposed to win and they were favored by 7 points, and beating somebody 24-10 is, I'm not saying it's not a blowout. But I think that this is going to be a marker for Alabama's season in the sense of, okay, we know what some good football looks like. We have to see it all put together. I think the Milroe had a lot of good plays. He had a few bad ones. I think that the interception, to me, it wasn't a great decision, but I'm not so concerned about it. I'm more concerned about the 2 plays before that where we were at the 1 yard line and lost 20 yards on a 1st and goal at the 1. So I think that's to me that's more concerning because we can get Milroe to not make that throw, but we've got to make him make some other ones to get the ball just out of his hands. As he's out of the pocket, throw it away, live find another play instead of losing a few yards here and there. But overall, I thought it was a good game by Alabama, a great response. I think that Alabama fans are a little bit more at ease now going forward, and to have Mississippi State on the road coming up, which we'll break down in the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're grateful for if you've listened to this podcast. Hey, we're grateful that you've kind of become part of our family a little bit. You've come into the Pigskin Cafe. You've sat down with a plate to eat. So grateful you spent some time with us. Hey, but like we said, we're going to start trying to maybe chop this up, put out another podcast. So be looking out for it on Thursday. But the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until Thursday, chew on that. We'll see y'all soon.